السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله تعالى وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. My dear brothers and sisters, today is the first of the Rabiuth Thani, 1444 years after the Hijrah, or the migration of our beloved Prophet ﷺ, which coincides with 26th of October 2022. And I welcome you back to our Uzdul Ghaba series, The Lions of the Forest. And we have recently completed the life of the illustrious companion Abu Ubaid ibn al-Jarrah radiallahu anhu. And we are going to embark upon the short journey, the life sketch of one of the great companions of the Prophet ﷺ, and he was the Mawla, or the freed slave of the Prophet ﷺ. His name was Safina Abu Abdurrahman Mawla Rasulillahi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Safina was the title, it was not his name, and his laqab was Abu Abdurrahman. His kunya was Abu Abdurrahman. As for his name, we will hear that we exactly do not know what his name is. But this is what he is known in the hadith as Safina. But before we embark upon his life, I want to briefly talk about the freed slaves of the Prophet Sallallaahu alayhi wasallam. The Prophet ﷺ had many Mawla. Mawla, the word Mawla has different meanings, but usually it is used to refer to freed slaves, slaves which you own and then you free, Mawla. And then he had Abd, slaves who were working for him. And then he had Khadim, servers, who used to serve him. Like we have Anas ibn Malik, Khadim Rasul ﷺ. Okay, they used to serve in the home. And we're going to talk about the Khadim in another episode, inshallah. And then he had Ghulam, those who were referred to as Ghulam. Now, let's talk about the word Mawla and Ghulam. Mawla has different meaning. The Mawla can mean, usually as I said, usually it means the freed slave, but it can also mean a slave who is not freed, who is not hur. Also, the word Mawla can be attributed to the master. So Mawla, as you can see, has two opposite meaning, slave and master. And as we know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of his name is Al-Mawla, wa ni'mal Mawla wa ni'mal Nasir, guardian, master. So Mawla can have both meaning. Also, Mawla can be called, a person can be called the Mawla of so and so if this person or his people or the family of somebody from his family accepted Islam from the other family. Okay, so this is something called the Wilaya of Al-Islam. So for example, we have the very famous example of Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah. He was the Mawla of Al-Ju'fiyin, the tribe of Al-Ju'fi, because one of his ancestor, Imam al-Bukhari, Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari, his name was Mughira. He accepted Islam in the hand of Abu Yaman al-Ju'fi. So they were the Mawla of al-Ju'fi. But that doesn't mean they were free slaves. This is the Wilaya of al-Islam. So Mawla has different meaning. But when it comes to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and the Mawla is mentioned there, this is referring to the slave and especially the freed slaves. Then the word Ghulam. Ghulam usually means slave. And if the word Ghulam is used for a Sahabi, Ghulam Rasul al-Ghulam Nabi Sallallahu it is meaning that he was the Ghulam of the Prophet Sallallahu, and the Ghulam usually here means the slave. It could be free, it could be not free. Also the word Ghulam can be referred to a young boy. Also the word Ghulam can be referred to an elderly man who has reached above 40 and so on and so forth. So the Ghulam has also different meaning. But in the hadith, when the word with the Ghulam is mentioned, it is usually referring to the slave. Could be free, could be not free. Let's read one of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in Sahih al-Bukhari in Kitab al-Itq, the book of the freeing the slaves. On the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يقول أحدكم أطعم ربك ووضي ربك اسقي ربك وليقل سيدي ومولاي. The Prophet ﷺ said, one of you should not say, I have given food to my Rabb, meaning my master. I have given him water to make wudu to my Rabb. I have given water to my Rabb. Don't call him Rabb, but rather call him Sayyidi, my master, wa Mawlaya, or my Mawla, my guardian, my master. وَلَا يَقُلْ أَحَدُكُمْ عَبْدِي أَمَتِي. And do not, one of you should not say he is my slave, male slave, or he is my female slave. No, meaning like, okay, the English, when we go to English, it is allowed to say he is my male slave, he is my female slave. But in Arabic, you cannot say abdi, he is my abdi, or he is my amati. Okay? وَلْيَقُلْ, and the Prophet said, you should say fataya, my young slave boy, wa fatati, my young slave girl, wa ghulami, or my ghulam. As you can see here, the word ghulam, fata, fatati is used to refer to the slave. But somebody should not say abdi, amati. Another narration in Sahih Muslim, more clear, the Prophet said, La yakulunna hadukum abdi wa amati. You should not say abdi wa amati. My abd, my ama. Kullukum abidullah, because all of you are the slaves of Allah. Wa kullu nisaikum, and all of your women, ima'ullah, they are the ima of Allah. Walakin yakul, but you should say ghulami, my ghulam, wa jariyati, my jariya, wa fataya, and my fata, wa fatati, and my the girl, talking about the girl slave. So these are the words which are used. So sometimes the narration would say, I sent my jariya, from the hadith of Salama. She wanted to know what the Prophet ﷺ was praying after Asr. So Salama, she said, I sent one of my jariya. When you go to the translation, they say that she sent one of her slave girls. But the jariya has two meanings. Jariya could be a girl. I had a girl, I sent her. Or jariya could be the slave girl. In this case, it's talking about the slave. That's why they translate the jariya as a slave girl. And as you can see, these are all connected to the hadith of the Prophet Sallallaahu Alaihi Wasallam. Now, one thing to understand, that the slavery of Al-Islam is completely different than the slavery of the Western culture and the other things. It's completely different. The slaves have their own rights, own responsibilities, and the masters have to fulfill those responsibilities to the slaves, and they have to treat them like they treat their own family members. And that's why we see the slaves of the Prophet ﷺ, the slaves of the Sahabat al-Kiram, they were ulama, they were scholars. Why? Because they were sitting like anybody else and learning. And that culture that have developed in many of our countries, we keep not the slaves, servants in our home, and we treat them so bad. They cannot sit on our chairs, they cannot eat from our plates, they cannot sit with us on the table. In fact, this will be considered as very, very disrespectful and very, very wrong. This is what is wrong. Islamically, this position is not correct. They have to be treated equally like the family members. And that is something that you see in this country. It's a kuffar country. Somebody who's coming to clean your house, somebody who's coming to clean your backyard, you don't treat them like very lowly and in a disgusting way, like many Muslim countries where they treat their servants or those who serve them in a very lowly and disgusting manner. The food they give is the low quality. Whatever is left over, they will just mix it with some water or this or that and feed. And Allah watches all of these things, and Allah will hold us accountable for this. So when we study the rights of the slaves and so on and so forth, it shows us the beauty of Al-Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ, although it is allowed in Al-Islam to have slaves, but the Prophet ﷺ used to urge the Sahabat al-Kiram to free slaves. Allah mentions that in the Quran, and the Prophet ﷺ also from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he encouraged the Sahaba to free a lot of slaves. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ, when he died, although he had many slaves, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but when he died, he didn't have anybody left. Everybody was freed and let go. We have the hadith of Amr ibn al-Harith radiallahu anhu, and this is in Bukhari, Sahih Bukhari. And Amr ibn al-Harith is the brother of Juwayriya ibn al-Harith bint Harith radiallahu anha. Juwayriya, the mother of the believers, her brother, and as you know, they were from the very noble family of the Jewish tribe. They accepted Islam, and of course she was married, and he was the brother-in-law of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Amr ibn al-Harith, he said, قال ما ترك رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم دينارا. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't leave behind any dinar, golden coin, wala dirham, or any silver coin, wala abdan, or any slave, wala amatan, or any female slaves, إلا بغلته البيضاء التي كان يركبها, except the white mule that he used to ride, وسلاحه and his weapons, وأرضا جعلها لابن السبيل صدقة, and a piece of land which he has given as a charity for the needy travelers. This hadith is a hujjah that the Prophet ﷺ freed all of his slaves, Sallallaahu alayhi wasallam, as he used to give out dinar and dirham left and right. He didn't like to hoard any of that. Now, come to how do we find the list of the Mawalee of the Prophet ﷺ? Okay, our goal is not just to collect names, because if you want to collect names, you can collect more than 100 names. All of them are attributed as the Mawla of the Prophet ﷺ. When we go into the books of the Sirah, biography, or the books of the Tarikh, there is a lot of individuals, names that are referred to as the Mawla of Rasulullah ﷺ. Okay, but the only way we can verify that somebody was the Mawla and he existed as the Mawla of the Prophet ﷺ if we have an authentic hadith with regards to this person, which says that he was the Mawla. Other than that, we cannot verify. I started collecting because I was trying to prepare the life of Safina, Abu Abdurrahman Mawla Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam radiyallahu anhu. And I started collecting these names, and when I went to the books of the Sirah and biography, and my knowledge is very limited, I found out many names, okay, and then I categorized into 4 categories. The first category is what is most important for us. Those names where we have a hadith. Where we have a hadith and it is clear that they were the slaves of the Prophet ﷺ, either free or they were working for the Prophet ﷺ in his lifetime. This is the first list, and this is the most important and the golden list. The second list is the Sahaba or the Mawla I found, but their narrations are disputed. Some of the recent scholars like Imam al-Albani, Sheikh Shuaib al-Arnaoud, they have authenticated those narrations, and that's why I put these, and I found few names there. I put it in the second category. As for the third category, this is the largest, one of the largest, and that is the list of the names. We have hadith for them, but the hadith are for sure weak. For sure weak. So these cannot be attributed to the Prophet ﷺ as the Mawla, for sure. And then the fourth category are the names for whom we don't even have a hadith. There is no even weak narration. It's just the name is there and it says Mawla. Or so and so historian said there is a name like this and he used to be the Mawla of the Prophet ﷺ. But there is no authentic traces, evidence, not even weak. So these names, of course, we cannot attribute to the Prophet ﷺ. So as we said, we are going to stick to the first group and try to understand them and learn, and that should be more than enough, insha'Allah ta'ala. Let me just list them quickly. The first and one of the most famous Mawla of the Prophet ﷺ is who? Zayd ibn al-Haritha. Zayd ibn al-Haritha radiallahu anhu. And he is also very famous because he is known as the Hubb of the Prophet ﷺ, the love of the Prophet ﷺ. And also his son, Usama ibn Zayd, Mawla Rasulullah ﷺ. We have authentic report for these things. Okay, his son was Usama ibn Zayd radiallahu anhu, Mawla of the Rasul ﷺ. Also another great Mawla of the Prophet ﷺ, Thawban. And the other one is Abu Rafi', and their narrations are in the books of the Hadith. And then we have Safina, whose life we are going to talk about. And actually we'll know that Safina was not freed by the Prophet ﷺ. Safina was actually freed by Salama radiallahu anha. So he was actually a Mawla for Salama. But why they attribute him to the Prophet ﷺ as an extension? Because what was owned and freed by the Prophet's wife while they were married with him, after they were married with him, is of course belongs to him automatically. So that's why they call him the Mawla of Rasulullah ﷺ. Then there's another Sahabi who is known as Abu Asib. There is only one authentic narration with regards to him that I found is authenticated by Sheikh Muqbil also. So it is for sure this name is from the Mawla of the Prophet ﷺ. Then we have Anjasha, the black slave Anjasha, who used to be the Mawla of the Prophet ﷺ, Ghulam of the Prophet ﷺ, and he used to drive the camels. So when they were in the journey, Anjasha was the ones who used to drive the camels, which used to carry the mothers of the believer. That's why we have that famous hadith in Bukhari, Ya Anjasha ruwaidaka sawqan bil qawarin. O Anjasha, be gentle with the carriers of the fragile glass vessels. And she is talking about the women and the mothers of the believers who were being carried in the back of the camel. Then we have the Rabah, the black slave, who was guarding the door of the Prophet ﷺ. And this we have in the hadith in Bukhari, when the Prophet ﷺ, he separated himself from the wives. There was something going on between him and his wives, and he separated because he was angry with them. Umar radiallahu anhu wanted to go to him, and he found him to be in a room, and Rabah was guarding the room, the door. And he asked Rabah, please go and seek permission from the Prophet ﷺ for me to enter. And that is the information of Rabah, the black slave. Then we have the slave called Mid'am. Mid'am, and his story is in Bukhari, Sahih Bukhari. Mid'am was a slave who was given to the Prophet ﷺ in the battle of Al-Khaybar. And this slave, unfortunately, he stole something from the booty, war booty. And he was accidentally killed by an arrow. So when he was killed after the battle of Khaybar, he was putting the saddle on the camel. He was killed. The Sahaba said he has glad tidings of Jannah. The Prophet ﷺ said no. He took a dress from the booty before the war booty was distributed, and this will be a burning flame for him, covering with him burning flame. And this is the story of Mid'am, Mawla Rasulillahi Sallallaahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Then we have some of the Mawalee of the Prophet ﷺ, or the slaves of the Prophet ﷺ, we do not know their name. One of the authentic hadith, which is reported by our mother Aisha, she said, and the hadith in Tirmidhi and Abu Dawud, an authentic hadith, she said one of the Mawla of the Prophet ﷺ, and he didn't mention who it is, he fell down from the date palm tree and he died. And he didn't leave behind any inheritors. This is the story of that Mawla. And inshallah, we are going to go into these stories a little bit more gradually in our episodes, and you're going to go learn more about them, inshallah. Then we have the story of the three slaves of the Prophet ﷺ who are not named, and this is reported by Imam Muslim on the authority of Jabir radiallahu anhu, said that a slave came to the Prophet ﷺ and he gave him pledge to migrate. Okay, and the Prophet ﷺ didn't know that he was a slave, he was not freed. So he took the pledge, but then the master came and looked for the slave. So the Prophet ﷺ at this time, he said, sell him to me. He bought this slave from that master with two black slaves. These three slaves are the slaves of the Prophet ﷺ, but we do not know their names. These are the male slaves. So how many do we have? Let me count. We have Zayd, Osama, Thawban, Abu Rafi, Safina, Abu Asib, Anjasha, Rabah, Mid'am, the four unnamed slaves. So basically 13 slaves, male slaves, we know that we can safely attribute them to the Prophet ﷺ, because we know the hadith, Man kadhaba alayya muta'ammidan falyatabawwa maqadahu minan nar. If anybody attributes a lie to the Prophet ﷺ, even if I say so and so is a slave of the Prophet ﷺ, and I'm not sure, I'm attributing something to the Prophet ﷺ. It's not allowed for us. A lot of people, they think that biography of the Sahaba or the Prophet is a piece of cake. I can just relate whatever is there in the book. It is not like that. Now we go to the female slaves of the Prophet ﷺ. Free slaves. And from them most famous is Ayman. Ayman, she was the one who took care of the Prophet ﷺ when he was a child. And also Ayman was married to Zayd ibn al-Haritha. Okay, and Usama ibn Zayd is the son of Zayd ibn al-Haritha and Ayman. And Ayman was one of the Mawlata, or the freed slave of the freed woman slave of the Prophet ﷺ. We have authentic hadith for that. Then the other famous one, of course, one of the most famous, is one of the mother of the believers, and that is Safiya bint Huway. Safiya bint Huway radiallahu anha, of course she is from the Ummahat al-Mu'minin, but we know her story in Bukhari, that after the fall of the Jewish tribe that she belonged to, and she was the daughter of Huway ibn Akhtab, one of the major leaders of the Jewish tribe, she was distributed as a prisoner, as a slave girl, and she fell in the lot of Dihya al-Kalbi, one of the Sahabi called Dihya al-Kalbi, who was basically, when Jibreel alayhi salam used to come, one of the form he used to take is the form of Dihya al-Kalbi radiyallahu anhu, this Sahabi. Anyway, she fell into her lot, but the Prophet ﷺ was told by somebody that you gave, the daughter of Hawaii to, you deserve her. So Prophet ﷺ looked at her, then he told Dihya to choose other girls. And the Prophet ﷺ took her and freed her and married her. So she was the Mawlata Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and also she was, of course, from the Ummahatil Mu'minin. Then we have the unnamed slave. This slave girl, we do not know exactly her name, but this is reported by Bukhari, Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, that Abu Hurairah said, once I heard this from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I had a lot of respect for the tribe of Banu Tamim. Okay, and one of the things he mentioned that وَكَانَتْ سَبِيَّةٌ مِّنْهُمْ عِنْدَ عَائِشَةَ, and there was a slave girl, okay, a war prisoner from this tribe Banu Tamim, that was owned by our mother Aisha. فَقَالَ, the Prophet ﷺ said, أَعْتِقِيهَا, free her, فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ وَلَدِ إِسْمَعِيلِ, because she is from the children of Ismail. She is from the children of Ismail. Now, she is this girl, slave girl, exactly we do not know what her name is. She was freed by Aisha radiallahu anha, but we can definitely attribute her to as a Mawla, or the slave girl who was freed by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Similarly, Barira, the famous story of Barira. Barira came to Aisha radiallahu anha. This is in Bukhari and Muslim. Very famous story. And she wanted her to be freed, and our mother Aisha went to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told her to free her, help her to free. And she freed her. So Barira was the Mawlata Aisha, but of course can be extended to as the Mawla of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Similarly, we have report in Bukhari of our mother of the believers, Maimuna radiallahu anha, that she freed a slave girl, and she asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet said, did you really free her? She said, yes. The Prophet said, if you had given her to your meaning to your paternal uncles, it would have been more rewarding for you. This also we can attribute, this girl, although we do not know her name, we can attribute to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Also we know, I just mentioned in the beginning, Salama, she sent her Jariya to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to find out what he is praying after Asr. That Jariya, the slave girl of Salama, if she was freed or not, exactly do not know, but can be attributed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The last one of the Mawlata Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported by Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu. He said that there was a slave girl, our Prophet ﷺ was having relationship with her, and this hadith is reported by Imam al-Nasai in the Tafsir, and also Imam Hakim al-Naisaburi reported in his Mustadrak, and Imam Muqbil ibn Hadi al-Wadi'i, he authenticated this narration in Sahih Asbab Nuzul. Okay, and our mother Aisha and Hafsa kept on telling him to stop this, our Prophet ﷺ, until the Prophet ﷺ forbade her for himself. When he did that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the first verse of Surah Al-Tahrim, Ya ayyuhan nabi, lima tuharrimu ma ahallallah. O Prophet, why do you forbid something for yourself which Allah has made halal for you? This verse, as we know, the one which is even another context we have for which it was revealed is when the Prophet ﷺ stopped to take the honey from the home of Zainab bint Jahsh radiallahu anha, because of the things which were going on between the mothers of the believers, some kind of, internal politics, okay, radiallahu anha. And they were the best of the women, no doubt about this, but they had certain kind of, tension or competition, maybe not tension, competition between each other. The Prophet ﷺ didn't drink that honey, and Allah revealed. So there are two occasions for which this verse was revealed. One because of his not drinking the honey from the home of Zainab radiallahu anha, and the other one because of this unnamed slave girl who the Prophet ﷺ had the marital relationship with. These are the list of the women slave that we can safely attribute to the Prophet ﷺ. So how many are the women slaves? We have Ayman, Safiya bint Huway, the unnamed slave girl, the two slave girls that our mother Aisha freed, the slave girl of Salama, slave girl of Maimuna. These are the 7 women slaves, and the 13 male slaves we can attribute to the Prophet. There are many names, as I mentioned to you, many names, but some of these things we cannot really confirm with a very authentic chain of isnad. However, some of the ulama, they have authenticated some of these reports with mutaba'at, and that is the second group of the Mawla, and I do not think I should spend any more time. I think this is more than enough. You know now the story of the 13, in brief, the 13 slave, the freed slave of the Prophet ﷺ, or some of them could be the slave, and the 7 female slaves that can be attributed safely to the Prophet Sallallaahu alayhi wa sallam. Inshallah, in the next couple of episodes, maybe 3, I think maximum I need, we're going to cover the story of Safina Abu Abdurrahman Mawla Rasulillah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.